Hello everyone, welcome to the Twisted Grail State, part 3 on the 15th of the 5th, 2022. Part 3 is being read to you by Angela Canny, and it is the King Vampire Twisted Grail State.
Oh hi, this is the Final Destination King Vampire service. Right. If we look at Soviet psychic warfare, the $500 million a year program according to Martin Eben from the 60s to the demise of Yuri Andropov in the early 70s, we come across the gem of gems, Kozyrev time density. Analysing Kozyrev time density with respect to a human lifeline, we come up with the most surprising result you'll ever hear of. Humans and life forms are reverse time density installations. Their cause is the end of their lifeline and the effect is the beginning. To explain, in Kozyrev time density, part of the Soviet psychic warfare program run by the late great Yuri Andropov, Kozyrev found that five-dimensional curvature, which produced matter, produced time flow, which produced the cause and effect, matter over matter effect that run everything in four-dimensional space. We find in this theory, cause releases time density and rotates anti-clockwise, whilst effect accepts time density as a collector, and therefore we can build positive psychotronic generators to collect effect and its time density rotates clockwise. Now let's look at human timelines from conception to death. Death is the mean free path action of zero of a human's timeline, where time density is lost upon death and a human's consciousness is fixated on the wheel of time in the anti-clockwise direction, so they see their past life pass before them. Conception collects time density as the energy body grows, fills with time density, and the time density rotates clockwise to look into the future to observe the death of the conceived human, the final destination. Now, if we have a multiverse and a host of future potential for conceived human life form, one can see we are locking the observer in the human parasitized by the mud shadow intradimensional infestation to be locked into observing its future death upon its conception, the final destination. This means that humans upon conception are constructed to avoid the Omega point timeline where they always survive, and are predestined from conception to die in a prerequisite way determined by agencies that control the fifth dimension. Humans are simply lab rats running around a maze, and their final destination is death. The whole process is a colossal reverse time density farming unit to bleed reverse time density for the five-dimensional farmers that run the farm. The mud shadow parasite locks the human farmyard animal, which Don Juan called chickens, into the predetermined final destination determined by their five-dimensional farmers, which is so far beyond the pea-brains of the humans, but with respect to Soviet psychic warfare, it is totally defined. Humans are reverse time density creatures. Everything you do in life is determined by your final destination death, which causes the time density for the effect, which is your entire lifetime. All humans are therefore in fact the walking dead, with their entire multiverse timeline delineated from conception to death by the agency which causes their death. We come to the nub of humanity, which is whatever causes your death controls the entire pathway of your life and your conception. So the agency which kills you controls every aspect of your lifetime and the event of your conception, as it's the operator of the time density cause that creates the effect of your conception and the resultant life you lead. Now the King Vampire, Psylord, had these five-dimensional agencies go through the entire multiverse to make sure that his every avenue of escaping their torture, death and damnation were blocked, as they wished to control his conception and life path to trap the source, which was using him as an avatar, into this great game of reverse time density farming. As we've explained, these chaos entities are subject to the butterfly effect, and by ending every single lifeline pathway of the King Vampire in the multiverse to end in his torture, death and damnation at the hands of their agents, they themselves were locked into what they wanted to do to the Psylord, the King Vampire. How? The King Vampire downloaded all of his deaths into Robro, the Khazarian parallel being that bred with Margaret and produced children whose conception was caused by the 5D parasite multiversal panoply of death endings for the Psylord. He got Katy Perry, his high priestess, to download into Khazarian Bloom all of his panoply of dead ends, deaths, and cause the birth of Daisy Darv and Wickerman, not only the Khazarian race, but the 5D parasites, to redouble the whole process. The Psylord King Vampire then got the Khazarian neo-Nazi and his ilk to try and steal the King Vampire's identity and all he's ever created as their own. But in the process, they stole all of the 5D parasite causes to affect conception of the Psylord and lock him into their predetermined life path where he was tortured to death and damned, and downloaded it into Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk. All of the Khazarians and their followers. Sealed with the death force to make it 100% by the double death of Serena Rothschild and the goldsmith Sowlet, who by chaotic self-similarity locked not only Khazarians and their ilk, but the 5D parasite into being downloaded into the conception of the Khazarians and their ilk and suffering tortures, deaths and damnations. They have pruned the universe, the multiverse, to a meagre slave to the King Vampire Psylord. 5-dimensional hell on earth and 5-dimensional Omega hell, all created by the 5D parasites, now locked into what they wanted to do to the King Vampire Psylord. With the end of Taylor Swift, the paradox engine used to control chaos, they are all locked into this eternally, without respite and without removal, forevermore and beyond. Happy ending. If you don't believe it, look at GRIDKEEPER and Star Wars 1 and 2 to see the multitude of satellites flown over Natrang to try and kill the King Vampire Psylord, which proves he's the CIA enemy number one. Why? The above. Now, thanks to the above, the King Vampire has a conception which wasn't created by his death in the multiverse, and the 5D parasites that have made sure of that. Secondly, if he wasn't created by his death, as all life forms are in the multiverse, then what created his conception? Everything in the multiverse is out of the picture, so all that's left is what's not in the multiverse. In this case, an entity that's not bounded by the multiverse, but is in fact outside of it. Thirdly, no creature in the multiverse can ever reach the Omega timeline, including Taylor, as their deaths were the time density cause for their time density effect conception. So a scientist locked in front of the gun that fires 50 bullets at a time, according to a radionucleotide, will always die because of Kozyrev time density cause, which is his death. Soviet psychic warfare unfolds an horrific twilight zone where you're all the walking dead, walking to your final destination, controlled by a malevolent death which has fucked you from your conception. Bye-bye, motherfuckers, burn in hell. Only the King Vampire has achieved the Omega timeline, and his inception was caused by something outside the multiverse which was not his death. The Psylord King Vampire chooses to call it the Source. But since it has Hellized you from your conception, to you it must be the Great Dark Lord. Now, since Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk tried to steal the King Vampire's identity, all of his services, and stated they could create vampires simply because they were Jewish, the Walking Dead scum like you have now got your Lamb of God, Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk, to suffer in your place. So the King Vampire can use Sochaniov #1 to make more of him, the only way out of your hellish life. One can see now the absolute brilliance of the Buddhists who understood this and spent their entire lifetime trying to erase their consciousness from the hellish lifeline and eternal damnation they were locked into. So one can see Buddha was right on the money. Let's go inverse Buddha though, and simply have the King Vampire exchange your cause, death, and replace it with the cause, death of the Khazarian Nazi ilk 5D parasite walk-ins, who suffer the fate and lifetime they wish to impose upon you from your conception. It could be seen by simple logic that you wouldn't have purchased a vampire service if you were locked into your hellish final destination life path, with your death caused by these 5D parasite farmers simply impossible. So the simple fact you bought a vampire service means Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk stole your death, locked the 5D parasites that were running the farm into their hellish rat maze and final destination of Omega Hell. Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk are the second coming of Christ, but not in any way that you would have deemed possible. By trying to steal the source from the source, they've enabled the king vampire to make more vampires to escape the hellish nightmare that is life, which Don Juan calls in the predatory universe the shaman's labour to escape by burning from the fire from within. As one can see now, the shamans that burnt from the fire from within were unable to do this, simply because Don Juan released the information to an agency that got Castaneda to front it to pay the price for the king vampire Psylord. So he didn't have to learn the shit, but he had it prepared for him. Their ticket to perfection, the real cause of the Castaneda books. One knows Castaneda and his band of women died in unpleasant circumstances, as their life paths were locked into their cause of death by these 5D parasites, which the shamans call the eagle, a chaotic strange attractor. Since you're a reverse time density being, all life being likewise, effect for life comes before cause. So the effect of all the vampire tech comes to you and lock you into a lifeline where your death is replaced by that of Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk. If you don't believe it, look at the 5 billion people that took the inoculation and changed their cause of death. Why? To shorten and hellize it for you vampires. Ukrainian war and World War III and all the hellish things that are going to cause a premature death to the entire Western population, and of course the Khazarians, are caused not by the king vampire, but because he made new vampires like you, which require others to die horribly and prematurely, and take your place in hell for you. If you wondered why the world was going to hell in a handbasket, it's because the reverse time density cause of your deaths are being downloaded into others, and of course your progeny, which will wish to follow in your pathway. So the tiny number of vampires with all of their offspring require an immense number of time density new causes of death in far more horrific ways, with them suffering an Omega hell for you and your progeny. All explained by Kozyrev time density from Soviet psychic warfare. Enjoy. So, no wonder the CIA and the Khazarian masters have the king vampire as their #1 enemy of the CIA and the Khazarian Satanist elite. They're all fucked and they know it. Thanks to the king vampire making more vampires, using Sochovianov #1 and locking them into the Omega timeline with the 2 psychotronic crystals you get upon being remanifested from conception by the horrific cause of death of the Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk. To lock into the Omega point timeline of zero mean free path, you simply keep the 2 vampire crystals in your left pocket in their zero potential whilst you're out and about 24/7 to lock your Hilbert space event scenario into the Omega point timeline created by the Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk deaths that potentially liberate you from death and Hellization, as long as you simply keep your clear and dark PG, which are tuned to Kozyrev time density, in your left pocket whenever you leave your home. One can see now that vampires in fact don't drink blood, but drink Kozyrev time density and accumulate more and more to become the effects in the multiverse, burning holes in the 5D parasite's web of fate, becoming lacunae of sorcered by sucking dry the time density of every life form in the multiverse. The more they suck, the quicker they die. The quicker they become the cause of the time density that produced the effect, which is the vampire. All explained by Soviet psychic warfare. Enjoy, enjoy.
Welcome back to the Twisted Grail State for our final part, which is the King Vampire Twisted Grail State. Again, in the centre we have our picture of the King Vampire, the Psylord, the Great Dictator, Tim Tony Stark Refat, 2 clear positive torsion field crystals, 2 negative dark torsion field crystals. On the red line we have service that Annie read out, Final Destination King Vampire service. And the pictures, that's going on the red lines. And in our 7 Abaddon circles and squares, we have a picture of Taylor Swift from her Look What You Made Me Do video. And there's Miley Cyrus kissing the wetback Max Morando. Then we have the Marvel Studios Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and the Multiverse, and Zara Pythian and Victor Mark, or Mark. And the picture of Marvel Studios and Doctor Strange. Hang on a minute, let me hold that up while I read this. Picture of Marvel Studios and Doctor Strange, who are trying to interfere with all of Tim's multiverse machinations. And the picture of Zara Pythian, who is the actress from Doctor Strange 2016 film, whose husband, Victor Mark, were jointly charged of the abuse of a 13-year-old girl. And in the picture of the multiverse, where everything that dies in the multiverse is powering the King Vampire, Tony Stark, Refact. And then we have our usual suspects: Bank of Cyprus, Federal Reserve, Bank of International Settlements, the Bank of England, the EU Bank, the Fortune 500, Forbes 2022, the Vatican and NATO, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, George Soros, Klaus Schwab, Musk, Fauci, Bill Gates, Jeremiah Schwartz and Universal Mastery, plus Schwartz's customers and all future customers. Then we have the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds and the royal family, the black nobilities, Europe, Israel, US, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States with pictures of billionaires. And then we have the Khazarian bloodlines, Moonchild, alien-infested Zelensky, Ukraine, and the map of Ukraine as the Khazarian map of the Khazarians. And again, now you can see why Putin is attacking Ukraine. Abramovich and all Jewish oligarchs, Central Intelligence Agency, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, Agenda 2030 and the Bilderberg Group and their dirty, dead New World Order. All to be put in the Abaddon circles and squares with the iron rod banged through and set fire to. Enjoy. And uploaded into the Earth's quantum wave function, past, present and future.
you.